Welcome to Automotive EV. My name is Peter Wooding and thank you for joining us. Today we have our first session is more flexible and dynamic logistics chains. And I'm delighted to be joined by Dennis Vance, Marty Kolbeck, Heather GILHULY and XAVIER, I can't pronounce your family name, so I apologize, who will take you through all the opportunities as well as the challenges that they're facing. So without further ado, if that's okay with you, Dennis, I'll hand over to you and wait as the little square in the bottom.
Very good. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
And it's a pleasure to host the panel today. It's a pleasure to host the panelists. We've got a great group today to have our discussion, and so very appreciative of the opportunity to spend this time with everybody. I want to get the introductions of our three panelists in a moment, but first I want to open up and talk about the automotive business in the U.S. real quick to kind of set the table, if you will. You know, the automotive industry in the U.S. For the month of April, we had over an 18.5 million unit sales month. So our SAR was phenomenal. The industry was up over 110% from the COVID environment we had about a year ago. And so, and inventory levels are coming down quickly and significantly across the board for most of the OEMs that you chat with. You know, we're looking at about a 33-day supply for the different brands that post numbers. Not every one of the OEMs post sales each month. It's a limited number, but everybody's posting on a quarterly basis here in the U.S. Toyota, for example, their light truck inventory right now is about a 19-day supply. So the different people you talk to, you kind of have a number of different plots and stories going on with the retail business is good, inventory's tight, availability of what you are looking for model-wise, color-wise, whatever is limited for the dealer network. The OEMs, from one aspect, love what's going on because sales incentives have dropped dramatically. You know, a year ago, they were spending over $4,000 plus to sell some of these cars. You know, last month, we're looking at about $3,200 on incentives. So a lot of money being saved there. Anyway, that's kind of the sales thing. Business, you know, retail's good. We got the CPU thing, which we may or may not get into today because everybody knows there's an issue there. And some brands are struggling more than others, but we really want to chat about logistics. So again, I want to thank my panel for joining me today. I'm going to have each of you, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and kind of give me 30 to 60 seconds so everybody's kind of familiar with what you do. And I'm going to start with the shy person in the group, Marty Kolbeck, if you don't mind. So.
Thank you very much for recognizing the fact that I'm reticent to speak. Certainly a pleasure to be a part of this this group, and with Heather and Javier and their expertise, it's going to be a wonderful, I think, input on the industry. My name is Marty Kolbeck. I work at Auto Warehousing. I am the Director of Sales for the East Coast and responsible for the ports that we do and overall sales to the industry. I've been involved in the industry for counting it up over 40 years now. And I had 21 years at Chrysler before I left, and it was Chrysler then, before I left and went to Auto Warehousing. Familiar with rail, with truckaway, with claims, and just having one heck of a good time in the industry, watching the changes that never happen. It seems as though history repeats itself, and we're back there one more time. And while Dennis pointed out that the SAR has been terrific, the fact is that dealers' inventories are really small and really putting a tight lid on what logistics can do and making that inventory turn. So looking forward to discussion today to see what we as an industry, since we do have a shared asset, what we can do together to improve the deliverables to our customers, the dealers.
Right. Thanks, Marty. And it's appropriate we move to Heather, who's our OEM representative today, and she can chat about Volkswagen a little bit. But Heather, welcome, and please share with everybody your responsibility.
Sure. My name is Heather GILHULY, and I'm the Senior Manager for Process and Network Optimization for Volkswagen Group of America. I recently moved into this position. Prior to that, I was the operations manager for Volkswagen Group of America. So I oversaw the domestic network in the US for all of the ports, rail, trucking network. And now my responsibilities are more on the future looking network. So what do we need to do to set ourselves up for success in the future to match up the demand to where our vehicles are being produced? In addition to that, I have responsibility over damage claims as well as paying our vendors on a timely basis.
Great, thanks, Heather. Now, I don't see Javier on my screen, but I assume Javier's there.
Yes, hello, Dennis. How are you?
Okay, there you go, Javier. Javier, welcome. And I've done panels with everybody that's we see today, but Javier and I have not done a panel today, but I appreciate Javier stepping in. But Javier, introduce yourself and please share everybody what your roles and responsibility, and talk about SIPSA for a moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Dennis. And it's great to be with this panel of experts in the auto industry. My name is Javier ZERMEÑO. ZERMEño, it's a hard last name to pronounce, right? But I'm the managing director for SIPSA Terminals. We are a company that owns and operates railroad terminals in central Mexico. It's mostly in central Mexico. We've been in business since 1997. And we come from we are part of a logistics group that we're on the trucking space and on the warehousing space, and now we're focusing ourselves in the rail terminal space. We have been performing cross-dock operations for the auto industry for more than 15 years, mainly for parts, and now we are developing solutions where we found that there's a market need for even finished vehicle distribution centers. We are, like I said, based in central Mexico, and we believe that there's a lot of opportunities with these new USMCA agreement that luckily is in place now. We foresee a lot of opportunities and look forward to work together with our counterparts in North America.
Very cool. Thanks, Javier. SIPSA has a lot of things going, and I wanted them on the panel today because there's a lot of different things going on in Mexico with different pieces of business, and that's, Javier, I appreciate you taking the time. So,
absolutely.
Heather, if I could lead off with you, and coming out of the challenging year that we've had, and Volkswagen has in spite of all the COVID issues and CPU issues, your business is really good. But so what do you see? Coming out of this year for the balance of the year, what are the things that we need to do to, keep things moving, keep us moving forward, to, stay on the track, so to speak, to use a railroad term. What's your opinion on these things from Volkswagen?
Sure. Yeah, we not to rehash last year, but we've gone from shutdowns, lower market demand, and expectations of a very slow recovery to having a sharp curve upwards in a very short time with the beginning of this year. So, however, now we're, as you mentioned, CPU constraints. So we're all impacted by the global component constraints. However, all of that gets pushed into the second half of the year because there is still demand out there for the products. So we can anticipate that we're going to be testing our supply chain capabilities again for the second half of the year with really big expectations of deliveries. So being able to flex and react to the market changes will allow us to address those demands. But it's really going to require close coordination and consistent updates with our vendors to know what to expect. So having good feedback loops from vendors, knowing what their capacity is, if there's opportunities for additional volume and support, those are keys to being able to make sure that we can keep the supply chain flowing.
Second half of the year similar to the first half, or more challenging? I mean, any feel right at this point yet?
Yeah, so it's equal distant challenging. I think the first half of the year, we had some issues with other OEMs maybe being more impacted by component shortages, shutting down operations, which meant that the rail network was impacted. So if we have dependency on empty rail car supply coming from a particular plant that's not operating, that impacted our ability to get the equipment that we needed in the right place. Same thing with the trucking industry. I think the second half of the year is going to be everybody probably fighting for limited resources within the industry, as we've seen in the past.
So we get maybe the CPU thing improves, maybe not totally fixed, but improves. So then we have a bunch of production numbers going in Volkswagen or everybody, however you want to talk about it. And so then it's like, some kind of mass dash, if you will, chasing rail cars. Marty's shaking and said, rail car supply, trucking supply, automotive processor, I mean, so it could be an interesting second half as some of the CPU thing gets a little somewhat normalized, maybe, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you mentioned already that we've been here before. So, it's a matter of taking what we've experienced in the past and applying that knowledge to come up with, some creative solutions for addressing whatever the current disruptions are. I've been in logistics for 6 years with Volkswagen, and we have, we've had multiple incidents where we've had some kind of disruption that we had to address, whether it be like last year, which was, the entire industry and whole world was affected by changes to some self-inflicted wounds that we've had to deal with.
So there's a value for senior citizens like Kolbeck and I in this industry, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Don't answer that question.
I put myself in that position too. I've been with the organization for 27 years.
No. Kolbeck, Henry Ford the first was his first customer. So
Absolutely. I
can't see Javier. Am I doing something wrong? I can't see Javier. Am I doing something wrong, Peter?
No, I'm here.
Okay, now I see Javier. Okay. So Kolbeck, I'm teasing you. You didn't help Henry Ford the first out, but you were close to it. So AWC handles virtually every OEM brand out there. So you guys are chatting with a lot of customers about issues in the industry. Well, what's AWC seeing at the moment?
It's an interesting, you bring up an interesting point, Heather does, because you're right. We are the one group that has a shared asset, right? The rail car supply. And when the dam breaks loose on the rail cars, it's a matter of who gets there first, right? And under the current conditions, there has to be an equitable, shareable way. And I know that the AAR does one hell of a job coordinating the flow of empties from the west to the east and from the east to the manufacturers. That job is going to be exacerbated because we currently have, we also do plant releasing. So at the plant releasing right now in Detroit and in Illinois and at least 4 of our plants, they've gone into extended downtime because of the CPU problem, right? And that extended downtime has pushed product to off sites, believe it or not, so that they're taking the chips out of those vehicles, bringing those chips back to the assembly plant to poise them so that they can go back into vehicles and maintain the production flow. So as you pointed out, Heather, it's going to be the old problem in a new way, right? How are we going to accommodate this? And then add to it the emergence of the electric vehicles with the additional weight of those electric vehicles, limiting the number of vehicles that can go onto a car hauler, right? Suddenly your capacity is restrained. You've got a driver shortage that's been going on for multiple years. Nobody wants to admit that, oh, there's a driver shortage. And then guess what? You got people that don't want to work because the federal government is paying them to stay home more than if they were working. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy that we're into right now. It's a matter of we as an industry need to come together the suppliers, the carriers, the OEMs, the processors, all have to figure out a new answer to the old questions.
So Marty, second half of the year, you think this thing, we're going to see more activity, more fluidity in the marketplace? What's your prognostication?
Absolutely, the dam's going to break.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be that there was a summer shutdown, and after the summer shutdown, there'd be like 3 weeks with there's no production, and then all of a sudden on the fourth week, GM, Ford, Volkswagen, Toyota, everybody has their production come out, and they say, "Where's my rail cars? Where's my rail cars? I want my rail cars at my plant." Is part of the answer common yards for the origin? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I mean, it's been tried before, but maybe it's time to relook at a way that the industry can have common loading of multiple manufacturers on the same rail car. Maybe that could work.
I think wherever you are in the supply chain, whatever your role and responsibility is, I think the second half is going to be interesting, because I think we're all going to be tasked with some interesting challenges we may or may not have seen before, but it's going to be a busy time for, I think, virtually everybody. So,
well, the dealers are crying for vehicles right now, right? Their inventories are low. They're begging you to get the vehicles. So the old philosophy was sold goes out first, right? And then stock goes out after that. Well, the ones coming out of the plant, they're all sold. So
we won't get on it today, but I'll tell you what's crazy right now is the used car market. Used car market is insane, because some people are walking from the new going to the used, but those prices are going up crazy. So Javier, so Mexico is one of the top 2 trade partners with the U.S. and SIPSA, the group that you're involved with, represent. You deal with a lot of the OEMs. I don't know if all of them, but a lot of the OEMs in Mexico, and so you are seeing, and you have a lot of inbound business also, and so you're probably seeing some issues in your markets down there, similar or different to what they're describing up here.
Well, Dennis, what we see is we are a very integrated trading bloc with the U.S. and Canada, and obviously all our OEM friends, they operate very seamlessly between the North America, and Mexico is becoming more and more part of this supply chain. And we have seen that the standard, it's the Mexico standard, it's pretty much up to Canada and the U.S. as well. So we are facing the same challenges, the chip situation, all the supply side issues, and also there was COVID has hit Mexico especially hard, and that it has represented a lot of challenges for the labor, for the OEMs labors, and even the tier 1 suppliers, right? So it's been a challenge, but I believe we are close to we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We see that things are getting back to kind of like where they were before the pandemic, and as long as there are challenges that are not going to be fixed in Mexico, like the chip supply and all that. But we see things coming back the volumes are coming back, and like you say, everybody's waiting for a car right now. So that is good for everyone, I guess.
Second half of the year, Mexico, same thing. Business, you think is going to be pretty active, a lot of growth, movement, you think?
Yeah, we have a big election in Mexico in June. So a lot of, I think that the outcome of that election is right now the government has a lot of power in Congress, and some investments are kind of holding up to see what happens in the second half of the year. But
We lost an image there where he froze. All right, so Peter, I'm going to shift gears. Javier, if you can hear me, we'll come back to you in a second. So Heather, if I kind of got one theme from everybody, is it sounds like flexibility is. Javier, you're back.
I am sorry about that.
Thank you. So look, I'm going to jump over to Heather here, and so flexibility seems to be one of the common themes with each of you. So what's so within your supply chain that you manage, what are some of the things that can help your organization in regards to addressing some of these flexibility challenges?
Sure. Yeah, I think obviously the ability to act and react quickly when we have production or demand changes. I think that's kind of an obvious one, but I'll still throw it out there because it is so important to have, suppliers and vendors working with us that are able to make those pivots, those adjustments. And that really means all areas need to keep pace with those changes. So, last year we had the stay-at-home orders that forced dealerships across the globe to close. My focus obviously was the U.S., and that required our port operations, our rail network, and our truck vendors to really adjust overnight. So without their support to accommodate those changes, look for new places to store vehicles, it could have negatively impacted production. So our goal is never to impact the production, to find a way to keep those cars coming to our market and adjust upwards where needed. So we didn't affect the production. There were still some factories that were running. We were still receiving cars throughout the full year, and we were able to keep vehicles flowing to those locations that could sell them. So it kept our vendors updated. We had a daily communication with changes of openings and closures, so that everybody knew if they had cars that were on hold, if they could release them, if they had to keep them on hold. So it was a very interesting way of, having one of those experiences where you can depend on those, suppliers that you work with, and some that we hadn't had within our normal supply chain, to help us with those big challenges.
Wow. Okay, thank you. Hey, Marty, we got a question from our viewers, and I'm going to share it with you and let you address it if you don't mind. And it revolves around standardization of electronic messaging,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay,
Yes,
so the viewer wants to know, so how can standardization of electronic messaging between the OEMs and the finished vehicle suppliers create value in the supply chain? Any ideas, any thoughts?
Absolutely. It's a key and essential. To what Heather's point is I think you're going to see the manufacturers working more closely together to try and share. Again, you've got a shared asset. There's no question about it. So how do you make that asset roll? What's the best way to put it out there? If the suppliers are forced to have 3, 4, 5 different systems that they've got to create, because everybody wants their own system, right? Nobody wants to be the same. If they have to invest in that, then the price is going to go up. I mean, the costs will just go up. If there's a standardization of, let's say, a clearinghouse where all of the information goes into, gets translated and shot out in one language to everybody, then the suppliers don't have to make that initial investment of 3, 4, 5 different kinds of communication. They can do and concentrate on one and make that efficient and make it profitable and make it work for everybody, including the OEMs. The OEMs can keep their own structure and their own way of doing things that they've done it in the past. But if you've got a clearinghouse that can give one message out to the entire supply chain, imagine how efficient and effective that could be. So it's really essential that these electronic communications get as similar as possible. I'm not saying that everybody has to be the same, but I'm saying some standardization certainly isn't going to hurt. It's going to help a lot. And I think the AIAG has got something working with Mark Brazeau and with John Urban and with people from Ford and Volkswagen. I know for a fact Scott Mayberry is on the group. So everybody is trying to work towards some type of standardization to make it more effective and more efficient. Right.
Great question from our viewers, and Marty, great response there. And I like tying it into AIAG because I think that organization does a great job for all of us. So Javier, everybody's in Mexico building cars, a lot of production going on. But one of the challenges we have is the rail car supply issues and the turn and all this kind of thing. And then even there's some trucking challenges down there. And I know you're in constant conversations with a lot of the different OEMs. And there's a project that, you and I discussed and apparently, SIPSA's, come up with something that might be a solution for some of these guys on moving product down to Mexico. Can you chat or share any of that with us, or what's going on there?
Sure, absolutely, Dennis. Thank you. Yeah, we all our rail terminals are rail served by the KCSM in Mexico. We've been partners with them ever since they started operating in Mexico, and they've been great partners to us. So we have our largest rail facility in Mexico it's located in the central Bajío area, where in between Celaya and San Miguel de Allende. Those familiar with the Mexico landscape know where that is. And it's very close to a lot of OEMs, like the Mazda, Toyota, Honda, GM, even Nissan, all those guys. And so we learned coming to the market that there's a big need for a vehicle distribution center that could work both ways, from southbound and northbound. So we are developing this distribution center where we can store finished vehicles and then load them to rail cars, which we understand are in short supply, and then send them to northbound, and then maybe also receive finished vehicles in this part of the country, which is not far from the Mexico City Valley, and receive cars manufactured in North America as well. So this is an already existing facility. It's up and running. We are expanding it, but we've been doing business there for the last three and a half years for cross docking parts and some other transloading opportunities. But now we partner with the KCS and also with the Trans Development in order to develop, which are world-class, companies, to develop a finished vehicle distribution center that we believe is going to make a lot of sense for the OEMs in Mexico and their counterparts in North America, not only in the States, but also Canada. And this facility is also very well connected to the highway. We have great highway connections, and we have rail port connections to Lázaro Cárdenas, Veracruz. And like you said, there's a lot of trucking challenges in Mexico as well. But we want to minimize the drayage portion of the service, and that's what we believe we can do in this new facility that is going to be launched pretty much as we speak. We believe that this is a solution that the market is going to like, and we are going to provide the same type of services, level quality services that we offer to our existing customers for both the cross docking and the transloading business that we have.
So with the location of this project, you have great highway access to bring product in, and I assume there'll be a consolidation of some rail car supply. So you have great rail car supply moving out, and so this will help with the transit time from this location out of South Central Mexico to the U.S. border, and then I assume bring the empty car supply back to the same facility, just to improve the transit on the whole network, I guess.
That is correct, Danny. That's one of the keys for this project. Of course, the location, and also to turning the cars and minimizing dwell in the terminal. It's with a consistent good rail service that we get from KCS.
Yeah, great security there, I suppose, to help.
Yeah, we know.
It's always an issue.
It is always an issue, and we have state of the art. There's a wall all around the facility. We have CCTV systems. We have guards. We have everything within our power to make. We haven't had a security issue. We've been advised by our great friends from KCS, Jim Neisted, who is an expert. And so, honestly, we believe this is a very complete solution for the market. So we are going to invite a lot of the companies to visit, and then where they can see themselves what kind of infrastructure. I honestly believe that this terminal it's state of the art.
anytime you can get better car supply in Mexico, I'm all for it. I like that. That's awesome.
Right.
All right, Heather. So, so creating a dynamic logistics chain. So, how do you find value, or what drives improving a dynamic logistics chain for the Volkswagen Group?
Yeah, I think part of it is developing a valuable supply chain is knowing the options to mitigate the risks and disruptions. And I know I've mentioned that a few times, but I I truly believe that if we can smooth out some of those disruptions, that that we're going to be able to help with the costs. But using software to support maybe scenario building and be able to visualize it in a way to help the decision makers when they have a tendency, and myself included, to get into the weeds or details, but to bring it up to a high level that allows them to make those decisions, quickly, and have faith that those decisions are going to turn into a smoother supply chain, keeping those costs in check as well. So we all know that customer demands and preferences are going to change. Having accurate forecasting, but also those production changes and lead times and all these other factors that you have to put into that to create the dynamic supply chain. So again, that having some software to help you with those pulling those factors and the constraints together, it just helps with those decisions. And I think today we have so many options out there to help, with those visualizations, with using AI and, algorithms to really determine what the impacts are going to be. It is really a huge advantage. But, I can't, lessen the importance of having somebody that has some experience in the real world scenarios, running those and cross checking it, make sure that we're not making decisions that could harm us.
So Heather, so when I was in my Honda position, right, and we kept an eye on all of North America, U.S., Mexico, Canada, whatever. And every morning at 8:30 we had our operations call, and we've got all of our field groups in there, and I'm sure you guys do something similar where you're checking to see equipment supply, labor issues, weather issues, production, you name it. That's the call where you're checking how your day is going to go, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you finish that call, everybody runs to their cubes and starts hammering away on their piece of business. But we all had numbers that we're managing and evaluating, and at that time you had a sense of norm. Can you do the same thing now? Because we don't really have a norm, right? So the numbers you're looking at this morning, can you compare them to last year or 2 years ago, or is that a good question there?
Well, it's an interesting question, because part of it is you may be able to tell I'm not sitting in in an office with my background. So
I thought that was a very nice Volkswagen office, by the way.
It's beautiful. We are all working remotely. Those of us that used to work in the physical office together don't have that flexibility. So there was an added dimension of challenge when you are working from home, not knowing that you can turn your head and talk to your team that's behind you, and having an idea of those questions that are coming up on a regular basis. So it's been a challenge to keep everybody aware of what's going on and not heavily depend on one form of communication, and typically it's going to be email, but to really keep everybody engaged. So I think having Teams, having Skype, having all of the other video conference capabilities has helped with keeping everybody informed. But knowing what your priorities are and knowing what could impact another area is helping us to stay, I think, not ahead of things, but at least keeping things manageable.
Gotcha. Okay. Peter Wooding, I don't want to forget you. Any question for the group? Because to be honest, we're running out of time. We're down to about 10 minutes here, but I might want to make sure we address something you have. You're good?
Yeah, we're filtering a number. One quick question I've got is building on something Marty said with regarding to the movement of electric vehicles and how many you can get on a haul-away vehicle. What difference is it going to make, given we're all globally ramping up the need to be zero emission? The cars are much heavier. And at the moment, we have challenges because of chips and all sorts, but we're dealing with 5% probably at the most of a global market that currently is EV. Now, Volkswagen have got one of the most, I think, adventurous and exciting ranges of electric vehicles coming on the market colossally. It's a major transformation. But what impact is it going to have for the supply chain? Because as these things move and less vehicles can go on, where's the cost element going to go? Is it all down to the carrier?
Marty, that's you.
I don't think it's all down to the carrier. It's going to ultimately be the cost to the OEM and ultimately the cost to the consumer, right? The cost of vehicles is going to go up. The cost of everything is going to go up. And I don't know how ready people are or how deep their pockets are after this COVID experience to buy that new vehicle. And I don't know the generational change, as Dennis continues to refer to the generational change, which there certainly is. You don't see the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds running out to buy a car anymore. They're sitting there happy with Uber and with Lyft and with the different modes of transportation. So does that mean that the industry is going to change to a fleet? Is it going to be serving the fleets of Lyft and Uber and all these folks, and the individual young buyer isn't there anymore? When I was 16, I ran there the day that I turned 16 to get my driver's license and to get my car. My son was 20 years old before he got his license. He didn't want to drive. He wanted to be driven, and they want to be driven seemingly. So there's a whole change in the way that people are thinking and how things are going to be moving. And I don't know that I'm answering your question properly, but it's going to be a dynamic. The paradigm is shifting, and I don't know what that shift endpoint is going to be, how it's going to shift. I don't know what the effect is going to be on everybody, because it's all economics. Am I right, Heather? It's all economics.
It is. I think what we're experiencing, some of our executives have likened this to this is a brand new way of working. It's going to challenge this industry in ways that we haven't since the combustion engine was available. But it's how do you adapt? What are the things that you have to adapt with to move forward and make sure that you're still a part of the industry in another 50, 60, 100 years? Volkswagen has a very aggressive goal of zero emissions by 2050. And part of being able to determine that, to get to that goal is to determine what your current footprint is. So there's a lot of work being done in establishing the baseline to be able to determine how we get to that goal. But we just launched in March the ID.4 in the United States. And that's our first Volkswagen fully electric vehicle. I can't say that we were not without some challenges, but that was more the fact that we had to distribute from 3 ports instead of 8. That made that challenge more aggressive. We have not necessarily had the load factors are a factor, but it's not it's not the only factor that goes into making the car available. So I think there is a market out there. We're banking on it, that there's a market out there. We have more Audi electric vehicles that are being launched in the market going forward. I think for me, some of the things that I that I have concern over is making sure that when those vehicles are in possession of any of the supply chain, that we're able to move those without having any issues at all. So are the batteries holding their charge long enough so you don't have to try and tow it off of your rail car or a truck. So those are things that we're kind of watching as new challenges may come up, but it's it's definitely the overall need for CO2 reductions that that we need to look at for the future.
I've got a question for Dennis, for you, and for Heather, and for everybody on the panel. The question is that with this new way of looking, the new dynamic and the change, do you see more cooperation between manufacturers? I am not going to use the word collaboration, okay, because that's so tired, overused, and beat up. But do you see more exchange of ideas, things like Peter is doing with this forum, okay, more discussions going on between the manufacturers? Because it's always been said, let the marketing guys make the vehicles that people want to sell. Transportation is not a competitive industry unless you're one of the transporters, right? It's the same for all of us. Do you see that the manufacturers are coming together more often to discuss positives, negatives, standardization, that kind of a thing?
Javier, let me have Javier jump in, because Javier, you deal with a lot of OEMs in Mexico, obviously, and so you chat with a lot of them. Do you see a lot of conversations going between some of the brands, or no?
Well, there's I think it's more than before. Certainly, it's been increasing, and I think it's good for the market. It's going to make a better product and a more economic, feasible product for the customers. And yeah, we see more. And we see more collaboration. Sorry, Mark, but
that's okay.
Within brands, definitely. Yeah, we have several examples for that. Even in Mexico, yeah. So
Javier, let me ask you this. So you saw a need in the marketplace because the rail car supply issues. You chat with all these OEMs. So you go, hey, I'm going to put a facility together. We can concentrate some product. We can get a central location to get some empty car supply in. We put it next to a great piece of highway to make it accessible to all. And I'm assuming alternative fuel vehicles, whether it's electric and hybrids, that's into the whole dialogue of, because 10 years ago when we constructed a facility, this wasn't part of the discussion. But obviously with having a new property, new project at this, you got to think about those kind of things, right?
Absolutely, yeah. This is luckily for us, this is a fairly new terminal. So we have a lot of land for expansion. And we are definitely considering, having outlets for charging electrical vehicles, having EDI capabilities with, like Mark was saying, with the OEMs and even whatever customer has a need for that. And we are in a very bright spot right now because we are in an initial stage for this offering, and we can adapt to what we can see in the a lot of changes are going to happen in the future, but we have kind of be ready for them and adapt as many as we can right now.
Very cool. I think it's great. We only got about 2 minutes left. Heather, same kind of question though. Are you guys going back to some of your, I guess, providers, maybe more than anything, any adjustments you've got to make to facilities or requests to make with some of the hybrid and electric products coming in? Any changes there?
Well, we have set up high voltage, high speed charging capabilities at our facilities. We probably need to have some continual investment in that to make sure that, as I mentioned, that those cars are still charged fully. We have, invested in LNG vessels on a global level to reduce the emissions when we have to transport vehicles via ocean. We are looking at, again, the optimization of the network to make sure that we are in locations that meet the market, so they're closer to the end customer. Those are ways of reducing those emissions. But yes, eventually, once we determine what our footprint is, what our baseline is, we will probably need to have those conversations with our suppliers to look for ideas on how to mitigate some of the emissions. But where we can, we're putting LED lighting in to make sure that when we're lighting up those big blocks of parking spaces out there, that we're doing it the most efficient way.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks, Heather. Hey, out of time. That was our 45 minutes. Peter allotted us. I want to thank our panel. Heather, you did a great job. Thank you so much. Mr. Kolbeck, it's always a pleasure to see you. Javier, I appreciate your support today, and great conversation. Everybody did a great job. Peter Wooding, it's all yours.
Well, thank you. That was, I would describe the session as a wow session. And to be fair, it's lovely when a session that we could keep extending 10 minutes and 10 minutes and 10 minutes. I really believe this would have carried on. And so really, all of you, I really appreciate the time you've put into it and the content that you've given us all. And hope to see you all again soon. One of the latter parts, though, is you do realise in England that we are not going to be able to buy a vehicle from 2030 that at least isn't a hybrid, which is 9 years' time.
It's coming.
And 5 years later, no hybrids as well. Boy, do we know how to give ourselves a target that's going to be a challenge. But we could talk forever, but really thank you, and hope to see you again soon. All keep safe, and eventually we will hopefully get a beer or a glass of at least something else together. Take care, and thanks again.
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Hi, it's Peter again, and thank you for watching the session. Don't forget you can connect with all members within the EV community. Send messages to each other and start to build relationships for the future. Also, take a look at our supplier showrooms. Our partners have got lots of products and services that they have to offer, which again could be of benefit to you. Make the most of the opportunity, and thank you again for joining us.